Welcome students. Today we are going to start with RUP, that is so today we are going to start with one more topic, that is rational in unified process, which is also known as RUP. So we are going to see the introductions, phases, the work flows, and the best practices and the tools, how it is going to be work out. So moving towards your next slide, here you can see, first let's understand how what is the meaning of your like team unifying approach. If I will talk about any kind of your unifying approach, so what is the meaning of that? The first thing is, here why we are using RUP, because this RUP is nothing but it is a kind of your framework. Okay, so it is a framework for all the object oriented models. Whenever we will make any kind of your object oriented models, so we have to make the frameworks, so it is going to helpful for that time. And also this model, whenever we will make that model, is known as your RUP. That is nothing but that is known as your rational unified process model. So and this model, it will be on your two types. Okay, one will be your iterative by nature, another one will be your incremental by nature. So before knowing about the iterative methods and the incremental nature, you should know what do you mean by team unifying approach. Okay, when we are going for the team unifying approach, as we know, RUP only providing the object oriented models. So here it will have the common view of your development process, and how you can share your knowledge with the other peoples in your team peoples, and how you are going to unify with one problem statement and how you are going to deliver it. So all these things hold together is known as your team unifying approach. I told you that there are two natures. The one nature is iterative nature, another one is otherwise you can say incremental by nature. So here if I will consider about the increased team productivity, so what will happen here? If you have a large number of team, so how you are going to give the productivity well and fine? So here whenever we are considering about the team productivity, that time you should have the base plan about the knowledge or about the process. Once you will have the base plan about the process, then you can view how to develop the softwares. Once you understood the thing how you are going to develop and all, then you can model it properly. Once you have done with the modeling, then you can use many kind of your tools, and you can provide to the like you can customize and you can provide it. So here you can see, with this rational unified process, many peoples are there, those who are together. Who all are there? They can be your architectures, they can be your project management peoples, they can be analysts, they can be designers or developers, they can be testers, they can be release engineers, or they can be tool specialists. So all these people will be together to provide any kind of your service if you want to increase your productivity or if you want to increase the performance. Remember one thing, this RUP will come for your some around 6 marks of question in the exam. Most of the time this question used to come, so you should understand the terms whatever I'm being using in this RUP. So moving towards the next slide. So here we are going to see that one graph where we have this time limit and the content. Okay, so why we are considering the time and content, because if we are going for any kind of your unified process, if any kind of your models, that time you have to understand that if I have given this much of content and within this time period, then how my graph will look like. Fine. So that time we have some of the phases in our rational unified process. So that phases and all, it will work along with your content and along with your time period. So here you can see my phases. So here I have 4 phases. The first one is inception, next is elaboration, next is construction, next is transition. So all these phases will be inside your RUP. It means that the rational unified process is having 4 phases: inception, elaboration, construction, and transitions. So here in each iteration's time, in each iterations, along with your time and the contents, how it is going to be finding out the workflows. Here you can see the first term. If I will take the business models, in my inception phases, it is going to work out in this way, and then slowly it is going down. But in your requirement side, that is going to also going to be worked out inside my inception phases. And analysis and design, if you want to do, that will be working out in the elaboration phases. And implementation, testing, and all, slowly you can see these things has gone in the way of making you towards your phases, that is your construction phases or transition phases. And if you want to consider about your supporting workflows, because this is a normal workflow, if you are preparing any kind of your software or anything, this is a workflow of your process. But if you want to have some enhancement with your process and all, so if you want to add some supporting workflows, that time you should have the configuration and change management, you should have the project management, and you should have some of the kind your environment maintenance, all these things. So how the supporting workflows are going to work out with our pages, it is going to work out, you can see the graph, it's going to work out in this way. So we will have the each iteration types, okay. In each iterations, the workflow of a process or a supporting process will be looks like this. So now moving towards the next slide, here you can see, as I told you, we have to discuss about the rational unified process phases in detail. So this is the diagram for you. So I told you the four phases of the RUP. The first one will be inception, then elaboration, then construction, then transitions. All these four phases will be working with the time period. That is the first thing. So now let's go into the inception. What do you mean by inception? Inception is nothing but whenever you are going to activities, or if you are going to communicate or you are going to plan something, that time you have to use the inception process, okay. The next one will be your elaboration. In this elaboration also, again, you are going to in detail about the planning of the project, you are going to make the architectures, modeling, and you are going to specify all the key features into that. And in your construction phases, you have to write the source code, okay, which is very operational by nature. And here only you are going to implement all the codes and you are going to build the product. And in your transition phases, as you know, here you are going to have the testing things, okay. You will have the beta testing, you are going to have the testing things in these transitions. And also you are going to get the user feedback report, which is going to be used for our full of the process. So if you will have this kind of transitivity, then you can see that whatever the product we are providing to the end users community, it will be helpful for them. So these all are the process, these all are the phases we are moving towards. Now moving towards in depth with the inception phase, as I told you that this phase will have some major activities, okay. In this major activity, the two things are very important. The first one is like communication, and the another one will be like your planning, okay. Two things here we are going to check it out. The first one will be your communication and the second one will be your planning. So here what we are going to do is, if your customer is having some communication with the business requirements, that you are going to identify first, okay. First you have to identify the communication in between your customers and the business requirements. Once you will have the requirements with you, then you can make a rough architecture, okay, which you are where your system is going to be proposed. Once you have set with your architecture, by using that rough architecture, you can have one plan where you can discuss about the project, okay. Once you have done with the project, then next case you can go for like the use cases. If you want to use the use cases, because use cases are very important, and it has to be created inside this inception phase. And once it has been created, we can move towards your next stage, that is elaboration stage. And in this use case, you know, already I have taught you that you have to use a sequence of actions and sequence of diagrams, what are the things you are going to do. And also it will identify what kind of scope of the project you have provided, how you can prove your best of your project. All these things are going to be discussed in this inception phase. All these things I have written in the point wise over here. So that is, and also one more thing you have to remember, that in this phase the potential risk will be more, okay. Because here we have to support the full of the project, and we have to go against about the primary scenarios, and we have to deal with the project and planning, communication and planning. So this is a very risky factor of the project. Then the next one you can see, as it is a elaboration stage. In this phase, phase, this is also with the two activities. It will deal with the two activities. One will be your planning and one more will be your modeling. Okay, so planning and modeling. And also in this phase, what will happen? You can redefine all the use cases, whatever you have been defined inside your inception phase. So once you will redefine all these things, because here you can see I have written the vision and the new informations. If you have, you can add everything here, and you have to validate all these things, and you're going to prepare a new architecture here. And also in this model you will have many varieties of models. What are the models till now we have studied? All the models you are going to prepare. The first one is like use case model, analysis model, design model, implementation model, and deployment models. This kind of models are nothing but this kind of models will automatically create the baselines. Here whatever I have written, these things will create the executable baselines. And once a baseline will get created, then we can check if there is any risk is there, or we can deliver the project within the delivery date or not. All these things we can measure, and we can report with all the components and architecture, and we can provide the like scheduled date or scheduled cost, everything with very confidence period. So all these things are going to be discussed inside your elaboration phase. Moving towards the next one, this is nothing but this is your construction phase. Here what will happen? Here the main activity for this phase will be to make utilization of your use cases. Okay, whatever the use cases we have used, all these things we can use it as operational. Once you can make it as operational, then you can have the control over the resource management and the processes and all the components whatever been used. And major thing for this construction phase will be like all the activities whatever we have started from your elaboration phase, all will be completed by in this phase. Okay, and here we have the job to write the code. We are going to build the code, okay, the source code. And then we can implement all the codes by using any of the functionalities. And then we can start directly with the unit testing, because if you want to go for the, if you have written for any of the code, you have to go for your testing. So here first we will do the unit testing. Once the unit testing will be conducted, next we can go for the acceptance testing. Okay, so this is about your construction phase. And here all the assessment whatever we will get with all the criterias with one report will be generated. So next the last phase will be your transition phase. So what is happening in your transition phase is, here with the time period of the deployment, all the software products has to be carried out. And in this phase what will happen is you have to plan your deployment executions. Once you have planned your deployment executions, here all the end users whoever will be there, they are going to support. Okay, and they are going to support, and you can remove if there will be any defects, how the system has been created, or anything, because all these things will come from your user feedback. Once you have done with your testing, you can deliver it to your end user, then you can take the user feedback. Once the user feedback will be generated, then you can check it out. If any components or any defect will is there, you can remove, or you can if anything has to be added up, you can add. And finally what will happen, the software team, they will prepare the user manuals, and they will install, they will prepare the installation guides, and if any troubleshooting procedures, all these things they will prepare as a report and they'll keep it ready. And last, all these things software will be very useful to to release for the customers. So all these things has to be done inside your transition phase. It means that this is a phase where the complete work products has to be ready for the end users. So this is all about your RUP. So this RUP can come for your 6 marks of question for your exam, and you have to answer the question. Already it has come in 2018, 2015, and this is a very important question. It can come in two way. One question can be like explain rational unified process. Another way will be with figure explain the phases of RUP. If it will ask with a figure to explain the RUP, then you can go for this figure. You can do this, and also if it is possible, you can draw this diagram. Okay, and you have to remember all the requirements, the workflows and all, and you can do the diagrams. So this is all about your rational unified process. Now let's have one more topic, that is open source development. And in this open source development, what will happen? what all are the things we are going to do is, this is like an approach where all the software developments you can have all the source codes and everything can be published voluntarily whenever we are going to participate any development process. So all this open source licensed version will be available in some of the site where we can download. And there will be the here also has been written the free software foundation committee is there, where you can get all the roots of the softwares, and which will advocate to find out all the source code, and which can be available to examine, or if you want to modify all the codes, that all the codes part everything is available here. That is your open source system. And all this open source system or open source software, it is nowadays extended, because all the through internet only, all the larger recruitment populations, those peoples are their company peoples, they're utilizing all the datas from here and all the codes from here, and they're developing nice, so many authenticate softwares. So many of them are also using this code, reusing this code, and they are going to use, they're going to provide us many new technical softwares. So we can also find out all the available source codes over here in this open source site, and we can use how much we can utilize, and we can modify also. And in this open source system, this is broadly known as your we can broadly, it is open source product, it will not have any licensed version. And all the Linux operating system also they are using very rapidly for all the server systems and also for the desktop environment. And here one more open source product is available, that is Java. Normally we won't get it, or Apache web servers, or the MySQL database for all the management of the systems. Yes. So the next thing is many everywhere we can use all these open source systems and all. So moving towards the next one, you can see over here there is open source issues will be there. Some of the issues like, should the product that is being developed make use of open source components? Because whenever we will try to use some of the codes, maybe it will not work out because it will be interrelated with some of the components. Okay, so some of the library functions. So how to utilize that kind of codes and all. And also if you are going to use this code, how it is going to be helpful for our software development. So all these things in a business perspective, what you can do is we have to find out, if it is a product based company, then how to use this open source approach for the development side. And if we are going to sell any kind of software, then with the whenever we are selling the software, are you providing all the codes with the library components and all? Are you making it to be available freely or not? So all these things come in open source community has been discussed, and all these things can be available very cheaply, or you can have all the codes very quickly through that community itself. So that is nothing but is completely for your business purpose. And if you are going to talk about the licensing, how you're going to have the license version of your all the open source source codes, so those are available very freely. That doesn't mean that anyone can take and anyone can do whatever you want. No, there will be a legacy policy where you are going to have that policy, and there will be some restrictions how to utilize all this open source licensed version. And all this, you should have the keyword to access all this open source licensed version. So many big organizations or companies, they will have the access to utilize all these softwares, and they can take all the components or libraries whatever they want, and they can make utilize of all the systems. So here also one more thing you can see, that if you have any new, if you are going to develop any new system, if you are and that also if you want to make it as open source, then all the open source developers will believe like, yes, all these components can be utilized properly, and we can have these communications with that. Okay, so without any prior permission of the open source developers, we should not have the proprietary to have that code, or we should not sold that one, or we cannot buy that one. So there should be everything in a licensed person way. Fine. So that is nothing but that is your open source license. So we have some license models. The first one you can see as that is known as your GPL. that is general public license. Why it is known as this kind of name like general public license? Because in this license all the open source software will be licensed under your GPL license, where you can access all this open source, and it will be known as your reciprocal license. Okay, you can utilize. One more is like leaser general public license. This license where you can write all the components and you can link to the open source code, and you can publish your source codes and all. And the one more license is available, that is your Berkeley standard distribution license, where it will not be reciprocal license, it is a non-reciprocal license, and you will not be obliged to republish any changes if you are going to make or anything. So you cannot modify any of the open source code here. So that is known as your license details. So if you want to go for your license management, you have to establish a system maintaining all the informations about open source components, and you can download it and you can utilize it. And if you want to have the different types of license, then you have to understand how the component is being licensed and how we can utilize it. And you have to be very careful about the evolution pathways for all the components, because we need to educate all the source peoples about the open source, and we have to audit the systems, and we have to participate in all the open source community, so that we will have the idea about what are the upcoming available license open source licensings. So this is all about your open source management system and the license management system.